Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I am the Crypto Crow, and tonight I'm going to do something very specific and something I don't generally do, but I think I'm going to start doing this because the comments and the questions that I've been getting on a lot of my videos recently have been really good, very helpful, and very just non-spammy, and like people are really looking for answers, and I think I'm going to start doing some of that. So I'm going to answer Carol, and I'm going to answer Carol's questions as well as I can. But keep in mind, I'm not here to give financial advice. It's not what I do. I'm always right sometimes, all of that. I'm just a dude on the interwebs. I've been at crypto for a while and I try to help where I can. But outside of that, I'm not a licensed professional in any way, shape, or form. I'm just some old guy. Okay. So Carol's questions are pretty good. So the first one here is pros and cons of staking ADA without knowing what the government decides to do. Now, number one, when it comes to staking Cardano on like the Crow node or any other node, okay? Number one, there's nothing at risk. You're not locking anything up. You're not locking into anything. You can stake to a node and pull it right back out 5 minutes later if you want, okay? The way staking works is when you've delegated or staked your Cardano to a wallet, number one, you're staking your wallet. So if you continue to add more ADA into the same wallet, then it automatically increases your stake, which ultimately increases your yield. You don't have to continue staking every time. Like, let's say I start with 1,000 ADA and I stake it to Crow node, and then I get another 1,000. Like, do I have to then manually stake that extra 1,000 to the Crow node? No, you don't. It just automatically takes that into account. Number two, when you're staking, it typically takes roughly 3 epochs, or as I say, just to keep it simple, roughly about 3 weeks for your first reward to be seen, okay? And that is because when you've staked your ADA, let's say you're staking for 6 months, right? And then you pull your ADA out. Maybe you want to cash it out or you want to use it for something. You want to buy a Murder of Crows NFT, right? Whatever the case may be. What happens is it then takes a couple to 3 weeks or 3 epochs roughly before you stop seeing rewards. Okay, it's like starting a bi-weekly, a W-2 job, right? Typically, it takes you a little while to get your first check, but once you've quit or you've been fired, you probably have another check coming. It's very similar to that. As far as staking, in regards to the government and what the government's going to do, there's no reason why not to stake, for one. Because any of your yields, in my opinion, I could be wrong. I'm always right sometimes. It's just you pay more taxes on what your yields are. And that's the thing. Like in terms of like regulation and, like this whole choke point 2.0 and the government's trying to get rid of crypto and all of this other stuff. Is there an effort to do that? Yeah. I mean, it seems like this administration is hell-bent on just trying to keep, they try to say, oh, we're going after the rich people. We're going after they're not. I mean, what they're doing is they're basically going after the middle class. Has been the case forever. Like the middle class are generally the batteries for everyone else in the world. Anywhere you are, okay? So they're trying to pump up the amount of taxes everybody pays. They're trying to make it more difficult to not pay taxes for those that try to throw caution to the wind and take their chances against the now like 80, however many tens of thousands of new IRS agents there are who are now going to be armed with guns because apparently that's necessary to collect tax money in this country, even though we're starting to see some situations where it's like the IRS is becoming kind of a police force too. Like it's really weird. I can't make much sense of what's going on. I mean, I can, but not in this video. Um, and, when we say we don't know what the government is doing, well, they're trying to thwart the growth of blockchain before all of the people that they already have long-term relationships with are well established in the space. Because if politicians aren't making money off of it, they don't want it. And the way they're going to make money off of it is through providing an outlet for, JP Morgan and Chase and basically, BlackRock and all these groups, all these companies that they have relationships with that ultimately funnel profits, whether it's through taxation or fees or lobbying, all of these different methods that the government absorbs a lot of the capital that's being thrown around or being made by their friends. Okay. When they have figured out all of the ways that they're going to suck the money back into the government, then they'll probably say, hey, look, it's not so bad. And they're going to want you to use CBDC tokens, I'm sure. I'm telling you right now, when these CBDCs launch, and they will, and I know like Ron DeSantis and others, they're saying, oh, well, not in our state. Yeah, it's going to be in every state because it's going to be a federal thing. It's not going to be a local or a state thing. And there really isn't anything DeSantis can do about it other than basically wave a flag and say, well, we're against it. But there's nothing that the Florida or anybody else is going to be able to do. Okay, let's just be real about it. It's basically to send a message, just like a lot of the bills and things that Biden tries to pass that are completely tyrannical, absolutely outrageous, but they get kicked out and kicked down by the House or whoever. And, it's just everybody just trying to say, how about now? No. How about now? No. How about now? It's all it is. It's a game. Okay. I'm not overly concerned with what the government is going to do necessarily with crypto itself in terms of regulation. Also, think about it. We've got the XRP case that they're basically saying is going to be concluded now in weeks. And apparently the SEC has been ordered to open up some information that they've been withholding for quite some time. And obviously they're withholding it because it probably doesn't play well for their case, which tells me that when this is over and it's concluded, it may be a catalyst for a significant market change. Okay. And so that may be for the better, but I think ultimately what this boils down to is time. They're trying to make sure that they facilitate all of their relationships, how they're going to monitor, how they're going to regulate, how they're going to tax everything that's being done in the crypto space, which is also a space that basically changes as fast as, there's so many analogies I can come up with. It's just everything changes fast, right? And it almost seems like every market cycle we have new technology, a new thing, a new shiny thing that everybody's chasing after, whether it's, ICOs at one point, NFTs, fractionalized NFTs, meme tokens are now becoming a fad thing because everybody wants to buy their pet rock because it's going to go up. I just degened into the bots token. It's not doing anything right now, but maybe someday in the future it will. Those tokens like to pump at crazy weird times when somebody just gets a wild hair and decides to pump the token, right? I mean, you just never know, but there's a lot of degen activity going on in the space on a regular basis, but that's also what pushes innovation to a large degree, and it's also what keeps the creative juices flowing, right? It's the potential profitability of a new idea in a technological space that is pretty much still in its infancy. So what is the government going to do? Whatever the hell they're going to do. And at some point, it'll probably all pan out. It'll all work out. The dust will settle and we'll have some more clarity in terms of that. But in the meantime, there's no reason why you shouldn't be staking. There's no risk to it whatsoever at this point, outside of when you send all your documents to your accountant and he says, oh, wow, you got a lot of rewards from staking your ADA. It's going to cost you a little extra. That's okay. It's still just a percentage of the profit. And honestly, I've grown to learn that taxation is nothing more than the cost of doing business in this country and pretty much any country that obviously loves to tax the hell out of everyone. And there are things that you can do to kind of help offset some of those taxes in a very legal way. But, those are conversations for your accountant, not me. How and when to take profits is the next question. Boy, that was a really long-winded 9-minute answer to one question. I don't know if that's good or bad. Hopefully, I'm at least helping some people understand some things a little bit. So how and when to take profits? Ultimately, this is relative to the investor themselves. I'm not here to give you financial advice, but ultimately you have to ask yourself, when is enough enough? When does the risk start to outweigh the gains you've already established? For me personally, I study the market constantly to try and get the best ideas to when to exit the market, right? And we looked at the last market cycle. We had that first peak, and then it was like, holy cow, there's going to be another one. And then there was another peak that was a little higher than the first, right? And if you saw that first peak and you started to sell, well, the price did drop pretty dramatically, but then it peaked right back up, turned around, and went even higher than the first time. That market was cut up into two segments, and it matched very similarly to what happened in the, I think it was like the 2007 S&P 500 market. I mean, it was almost identical. So I always look for comparatives in the charts, in the macro, and everything that's going on to try and basically gauge when I should get in or out of a particular market. However, it also depends on your situation. Did you risk money that you couldn't afford to lose, which you should never do in the crypto space because anything can happen at any time? If you did, then obviously when your cryptocurrency portfolio has reached a point of profitability, well, then maybe it's time for you to take out the initial investment and then let the rest ride until you think it's a good idea to pull out the rest of those profits. That way, once you've done that, well, then you're no longer at risk, right? Because you've got your initial entry, you've got the profits that you made up to that point, you take out what you put in and you let the rest ride. But all that's just kind of a relative situation to the individual. If you didn't invest more than you can afford to lose and you can afford to risk it all and let it ride for as long as it's going to go, well, that's a decision for you to make at that point in time. Taxation and timing is obviously an issue depending on when you got in. If you hold your crypto investment longer than a year, you limit your capital gains tax to basically the lowest bracket based off of your income. And obviously, and that's also relative to where you live in the world. In the United States, capital gains tax is obviously a thing. I think, honestly, they'd love to tax us for just thinking about making a profit at the way things have been going. We're going to start getting minority report taxation at this point. Did you think about making money? Well, we're going to tax you for that thought. And it's just getting so insane to me. But there are still things that, like Trump said at one point, yeah, I do take advantage of these tax loopholes because you guys all leave them there for your friends to profit from, right? And it's like only a fool wouldn't take advantage of the systems that are put in place by the powers that be. So it's just kind of like, when you have the resources to hire the people to help you, make these decisions on how to plan and plot and things effectively, then it's definitely worthwhile if your profitability is enough to merit those expenses. Some people just love to pay their $80, go to H&R Block and be done with it. It just depends. There are so many variables to these questions that ultimately you really want to get people that are licensed professionals at each of these things to really help you make the proper decisions. But how and when to take profits is ultimately a decision for you to make based off of what you put in, when you put in, and where you are in the market cycle. Okay. Where the heck do you put your profits? Fiat is dying. Gold and silver are great, but not practical. Not everyone owns a house with a hidden safe, which circles you back to ADA. This is the reason I did this video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Well, Carol, hopefully I'm doing your question some justice. Ultimately, this is a question that has plagued me forever. Where do you put your money when there's insane inflation and it seems like the government's just constantly doing so many different things that are just not helping the value of the dollar? It's not helping our economy. Everything has been getting significantly more expensive since 2020. It just seems like the sky is falling and nowhere you put your money is very safe. Originally I would have said, what, my original plan was to put it into real estate, right? That is only good depending on where you're at. So the house that we live in right now, we're getting ready to move out of because we're moving to a different city. The house, when we bought it, has risen substantially in market value since we bought it. We've only been here 2 years, and the property values have just gone up quite a bit, enough that I said, well, we've been paying into this house. We've done a bunch of stuff to it. And I live in Florida, right? So, we added solar to it. We've done a bunch of stuff to the AC. We put a whole new AC system in the house. We put a whole new pool heater, all kinds of stuff to make the house better, right? But even with that said, even if we had never touched it, the property values would have gone up even more. So I always like to think that real estate is the best opportunity to basically store your money, okay? Because especially if it's investment property, and I don't mean commercial property, because commercial property seems to be having a lot of issues right now too. Everything is having issues. All of it is really going to be based off of where you are, what you're wanting to do. But the general idea, okay, in just very basic terms is, you will ultimately want to figure out where to put your money so that your money is working for you, not just sitting. And that's the rub, right? And so for a while I was doing research on what are recession-proof industries. Some of the recession-proof industries are things like liquor stores, medical facilities, like places where you go to donate blood, or places you go for getting lab testing for, like as a fighter back in the day, we'd go get what was called the trifecta, which is like your HIV, Hep B, Hep C test, right, before you could fight. You want to make sure you're not going to bleed something on somebody. And all those kinds of places do really well in a recession because everybody needs medical help in one way, shape, or form at some point. So, a friend of mine, he got really big. He's gotten really big into like medical marijuana dispensaries and getting the licensing for those and opening them up and getting them going and then selling them at a profit. And, but like anything medical is generally a pretty good idea if you know the market, you know the industry, you know what you're doing. There's a lot of licensing, a lot of regulation associated with any of that stuff. So you have to you have to know what you're doing in those fields. But if you don't know anything about the medical industry, what happens in a recession? People get sad, people get depressed, people want to drink their woes away. And so alcohol, vices are typically pretty good in a recession, okay? So these are all just things that like I've done really none of them. I've researched them all. I was looking at a lot of things, but I had at one point settled on the idea of basically getting a bunch of different smaller properties and ultimately launching a network of Airbnbs. But then that started to fall through because money's tight for everybody now, right? That's the thing. Everybody's struggling just to put food on the table at this point. There aren't nearly as many people running around going on weekend vacations, staying at Airbnbs all over the country. So now you've got Airbnbs that are basically sitting vacant the majority of the time, and people are losing their money because they're taking out mortgages on buying this property, that property, or whatever the case may be. And so it's just gotten to a point where, it feels like anywhere you put your money just isn't quite that safe right now. And it's a shame that we're in this situation. But I would say that, the other final thing that I've been looking into personally is artificial intelligence stocks. Because when the market is falling, when the crypto market is dropping, that doesn't necessarily mean that all of the stock market is falling as well. Okay. It could, but the more the institutional money comes into the space, and the more that the big whales and the big institutions, the more they kind of start sucking up market cap in the cryptocurrency market. Well, we're going to start seeing more similarities between things like the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, and the crypto markets, because a lot of the big whale traders are going to be making similar moves based off of what they do in Wall Street to what's happening in crypto, right? So we're going to have some very strong similarities in what's happening on a grand scale. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I would suggest, finding something that you're passionate about. Like if you've cashed out of your crypto, you send everything to your accountant, you talk to your accountant and figure out a plan before really you cash anything out. You put together a plan with your accountant, like, okay, well, what happens if I cash out around this time? What happens if I cash out around that time? How can I do this? How can I structure that? What sort of, do I need to, likely you're going to want some form of an LLC for your investments, depending on how you do them. There are a lot of things. I mean, honestly, I would suggest you just sitting down with an accountant and or maybe a CPA, maybe a financial advisor to some degree, depending on what's popping in the market, and put together a plan. Honestly, don't listen to any of us YouTubers. I've watched so many YouTubers out there, and they have millions. Some of them have 1 million or 2 million followers, and I've seen them give shitty advice to people, and you never really know what the motives are of somebody on YouTube that are trying to tell you to do X, Y, or Z with your money, especially if they have a business that they're oh, I have this business you could invest in. You know what I mean? I stay away from those guys, honestly, because everything is so risky. There was a time when I looked at everything as so fun and exciting and new, and it's like you kind of like a reckless abandon. You want to help the world, and you want to do all of these great things, and kind of take what you're learning and what you're doing and try and help everybody, right? And I understand that, but especially in crypto, everything can change on a dime, and nothing is really worth the headache in that regard. And I see a lot of people trying to build up real estate companies through YouTube and do all of this stuff, but where does it end? What's safe? I don't know what's safe. What's safe is ultimately what could benefit you long term, not necessarily just what's going on in the short term. I think artificial intelligence, I think cloud rendering, I think a lot of these things are going to be really big as we continue to move forward in virtual reality, metaverses, AR, honestly, social media, all of those things. I think, long term, by 2030, I think a lot of the social media stuff is probably going to be bigger and bigger. Virtual reality, augmented reality, and artificial intelligence, I think, are honestly going to take over a lot of the market that we have right now. And I just think more and more people are going to be resorting to that for a variety of different reasons. Those are just my opinions. That's nothing concrete. Hopefully, the ramble is helpful to some of you guys out there. Let me know. I do like answering questions like this, though, but I need to figure out how to do them in a less long-winded format, I think. You'll have to let me know in the comments below what you guys think. But at the same time, listen, it's Sunday. I don't ever really do content on a Sunday, so maybe this will be the Sunday thing. You can join me if you want, or you can skip to Monday and wait for the more condensed 10-minute or less videos. Until next time, guys, grow your coins. Hope this helped, and I'll see you soon.